An Obama-appointed judge yesterday blocked another immigration policy from the Trump administration. They revoked the Trump administration the legal status of and work permits of more than 530,000 migrants brought into the U.S. under the controversial Biden administration program. Now, that policy, the Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela mass humanitarian parole program, gave nationals from those countries a path to legal status in the United States. The judge ruling instead that each migrant is entitled to a case-by-case review, a decision that won't be on hold while the administration appeals it. My next guest says that ruling turns the whole parole process on its head. Former acting DHS Deputy Secretary Ken Cuccinelli joins me now. Ken, good afternoon to you. I can only assume that by your estimation, this entire policy has been turned on its head. It's that this was a mass humanitarian migration, and now, in order to deport, you have to go case by case. Mass on entry, case by case when leaving.
So, yes, and people need to understand the use of the word parole in immigration. Parole isn't like prison. It's permission for one person to come into the country based on their own individual reasons. And instead, the Biden administration set up the CHNV program as a mass parole. That is an oxymoron, Will. There's no such thing as mass parole. So here you have the Trump administration trying to undo that. And the judge says, oh, no, now to undo what was supposed to be case by case in the first place, but wasn't, you have to undo it on a case by case basis. I recall listening to Stephen Miller on the White House grounds giving an interview where he said, look, if we have to go through a case for every single one of these 10 million people that Joe Biden let in here, it'll take decades to undo it all. That's outrageous. And you have a judge here really interfering with executive prerogative of the president and, like I said, turning the whole parole system completely on its head.
The story, in part, Ken, is about a judge once again interfering with the executive's implementation of immigration policy. But the story is also, as you point out, the Biden administration. These numbers are pretty staggering, actually. This program, which was put in place in early 2023, so it's 2 years old, brought in 530,000 people. Here are the numbers, by the way. 211,000 came from Haiti. 117,000 came from Venezuela. They were mass importing immigrants into this country under this program.
Yes, absolutely. That was the point. And again, mass parole is an oxymoron. Congress set up the parole statute, and it actually says in the law, case by case. And yet we saw Obama do this with things like DACA and DAPA, very similar, with using their prosecutorial discretion. And now we see the Biden administration using parole to establish entire programs without congressional permission and to let in illegal aliens, because that's what they are. Parole is used to make an exception to your ability to be here legally. And they did it en masse. This was a big program the last 2 years, but it wasn't the only program under Joe Biden.
No, that's a good point. It wasn't the only one, but it is one that we should make this point as well, Ken. One would be tempted to think, well, this is a humanitarian effort. These countries were targeted because we wanted to extend an invitation for those that were being persecuted in their home countries. But it was paused last summer because of widespread fraud. This entire humanitarian program was paused because there were 3,200 serial sponsors. So here in the United States, serial sponsors helping these people come in. That doesn't sound like a humanitarian mission. No, not at all. And the fraud was epic. I mean, the instances of it, for instance, over 1,000 people filing for this parole from the same IP address in Tijuana, Mexico. Hundreds of sponsors listed at the same address. And this was repeated over and over across the United States, including like storage units. These aren't even people's residences or even offices. And this amounts, Will, to tens of thousands
of examples of fraud that the Biden administration itself uncovered. That's to say nothing of how this mixes in with, for instance, the distribution of Social Security numbers that DOJ has uncovered as well. Right. So when this judge tries to insulate these folks from having the parole revoked by suddenly treating it like a long-established congressional immigration program, instead of an exercise of executive authority using parole, they turn the system on its head. And who's always on the bottom? It's always Donald Trump across the whole use of these nationwide injunctions. And technically, this was an injunction. It was done as a class action case, which completely violates Rule 23, which is the federal rule that addresses class actions. Just on the point you made, if you've got these tens of thousands of instances of fraud, you cannot be like everyone else in the class. That's not a legitimate class. The judge is trying to insulate his ruling from appeal.
So now we have 530,000 migrants imported into this country over a 2-year period through a program that was filled with fraud, and now they have to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis or they remain in America. Ken Cuccinelli, thank you so much for being with us.
Good to be with you, Will.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.